Hello everyone, we're recording now. I just want to let you know where we are at this point. We're now doing our final lesson here of the Access databases. Again, we're still using the Belmont Landscaping. We have three databases we're using in this class. Belmont, and then there's the one in your book that deals with the clinic, and then of course the one you're doing in your homework for the animal shelter. So now we're going to do chapters 8, 9, and 10. We're going to do the main parts of them. Because there's some things that we really don't have to give a procedure much because many of the procedures are the same we've done before. The first part we're going to talk about is exporting to an Access query or a table for that matter into an HTML. Now the exporting, if I want to export a table into an HTML or an XML file, the procedure is basically the same. But the difference here, of course, we're not importing it, but we're sending it out. I wrote an accounting software system that exports the checks written by a company, for example, on a daily basis, and they pull it in to their bank, and they check what the checks actually clear with, the name there versus that of what the bank actually, or the sender or the writer of the check actually wrote, to make sure that somebody isn't writing checks and changing the payee, for example. It's sort of an auto audit. There's hundreds of reasons why you would export files, either to another computer for somebody else to use, or to another vendor, to another user, to another company organization. So the first way let's suppose we want to take data from a table and send it out to an HTML so that it can be easily seen on the internet. In order to do it, step one, we go to external data. Step two, again, we now go over to the export area. And from here, it's really pretty simple. Now, you'll notice that the the HTML is not visible there, so we have to go to More, and then we would come down to HTML. Please notice the other things you can send to. Now, a couple of things in your quiz and things you need to remember. If I export it to Word, you can see the Word logo there, but that's sort of a fallacy. It really is not going into Word. It's going to a rich text format. And that rich text format, oftentimes it doesn't go in the quality that you want. So we'll talk about that more later. What I'm saying is you can export a table, a form, a report, a query, anything to some other source and in a different format. So the first thing we're doing here is we're taking the customer table, and we've got it selected over here. I'm going to actually open it up here just to be on the safe side. We're going to open it up, and then we're going to go up here to the external data, export more, and then we're simply going to click HTML document. And when you do that, it's going to ask you where you want to send it. So we simply go into the browse box and we send it wherever. So again, that's something that your homework is asking you to do. So just be sure you know where you send it, or to the destination, as they would say. Now, I'm just going to simply send this to my default drive, and I click Save. Now, at this point, I will say Send this data with formatting and the layout. Now, the reason that they do that is, again, because sometimes you will have it in a report. And in a report, you have a lot of bold and italics and all of that. So if you do, then you want to send all of that exactly as you want it there. Sometimes you'll find when you send it to an HTML, it will not come in the exact way you put it in. The only one I know that has the best quality and that will make it absolutely verbatim as to what format you use is the PDF. But sometimes you'll get things you can't do in an HTML. That some of the formats you put in your reports, forms, or tables, the HTML can't do. And certainly the rich text format is very limited. There's a lot of things such as graphics and lines, and they'll simply just blow them away. They won't even bring them over. Now, once you do the exporting, you can click here to say, after you do it, please be sure to open it so I can see the file I have just created. So that is how you would export an HTML. At this point now, I want to clarify a few things. I'm going to cancel that. I don't want to send that out right now. Just for your information, just to kind of save you some time here, I can export, again, once I open a table or a query or a form or report, I can then click up here and send it to a PDF. I'm just going to send this to a PDF, for example. If you notice here, again, if I save it as a PDF, it will come out virtually the way that you see the table here. Now, I do not need to save the export steps. I'm going to close that. And you'll see here, if it pops up, it should be able to pop up. Of course, it won't in a PDF if, in fact, you don't have the Adobe on your computer. It won't work. It'll work, but you just can't see it on your computer. But you'll notice it shoots it out there, and it's very much, it's exactly like what my table looks like. The only reason it's not all on one page is because we have several pages here. So that's as simple as it is to export to anything. The thing is, when you export it to a file, then the way you get it to your customer or the other users is then you send them an email, or sometimes you export it to a certain place and some of your users have already linked their database to that area. So sometimes that's all you have to do. So you can send these files as an attachment in an email or just send them to a designated folder to which they would be. One of the things you can export to, as you can see here, is an XML file. An XML file is actually used quite a bit by the government. I've had to deal with XML files for clients who have government funding, and the government will require that you send the data to them in an XML file. Now, anything that we're dealing with here, you can notice we can import just as well. So again, without repeating a whole lot we've already talked about, anything you can see here, not anything, but just about everything over here that you can import, you can also export. And all you need to do is simply open the object, such as the table, query, form, or report, and just simply ask it, or I should say it'll ask you, you tell it what you want to send it as, a text file, a spreadsheet, or if you want to send it as, you can actually export things to another Access database, or you can see what they call a word merge, or more. So the procedure is pretty much the same, and you just simply answer the questions here, where you want to send the file, and whether or not you want to open it once the file has been sent. Oftentimes you will need to send things as a CVS file, but you'll see the thing is, if you click in here once, you'll notice that the CVS is not really one of the ones you would be able to export as. You can import them pretty simple, but the thing is that a CVS file is often, that's basically stands for a comma separated value. It's very much like a text file, and that's something I showed you how to import early on. So it's basically the same procedure here. I would simply click Import Text File, and I would go from there. Right in the middle of all of the importing and exporting things that we have here. Now be sure to read your textbook. I've given you the highlights between what I give you here and the textbook. You'll be able to answer the quiz questions. But the thing is, sometimes people will have a table that will be redundant. And what you can do is, and the way you know it's redundant, the way you know that it's not good to use that table is if you find yourself having to type in the data over and over and over again. So for example, if I had a table that had both the customers and the agreements in one, well then every time this person here, for example, Owen Hawes, every time Owen Hawes came in, I'd have to type his name, his address, his city, state, zip over and over again. So if you ever get a table, if you import a table like that, then you find you're going to have to split that table up. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of redundant and extra and repeated data entry. In order to see whether or not your database is that kind of a database, if you feel that the tables are too flat and need to be split, therefore, as we have done in this example with the Belmont landscaping, if you want the computer to help you decide, should the customer/agreement table be split into two tables, customer and agreement, it'll tell you whether or not to do that. One question to help you answer that would be to say, for example, can one customer have more than one agreement? If the answer is yes, then you need to split up that database from customer to agreement. Another example I used in my other lectures, not here with you, but in other classes I've taught, is let's suppose we have an emergency room. Every time a patient comes in with an ailment, you would want to keep track of those. The question is, do we have to split the tables up? Well, that patient can come in more than once. Same thing, I would want to make a patient table, and then I would want to make a separate table for the injuries, if you will, or for the hospital visits. And that way, all I would have to do is add the patient number to each of those visits in the visits table. Much like we add the customer ID here to the agreement table. Now, if you want the database to help you see whether or not you have tables that need to be split, here is what you do. Step 1, you make sure the table in question is open. Step 2, you will click up in here where it says the table tools. And then actually, really, you can even do it easy. You don't even really have to click on the table tools. So I'm sorry, at this point, you go to the database tools, and you can click Analyze the Table. Now, there's also the database documenter the book talks about, but this is, you can do the Analyze Performance. This is Analyze the Table. And when you do, it's telling you again what the focus is. So if I click Analyze the Table here, you'll get this little pop-up here. And it'll say your table or spreadsheet may store the same information many times. So if you simply go through this wizard, it will look through it, and it'll analyze it for you, and it'll indicate at the end, well, you know, perhaps you should, in fact, split this table up. At this point in your textbook, we are now looking at page AC AC 454, which talks about importing a table from an Access database. That's something we covered in an earlier session there. It's repeated here on this chapter, but the procedure is virtually the same. The next thing I want to cover here is the idea of creating a tab form using a tab control. In order to do that, let's close these tables now, and we're going to open up the main one we did earlier. We have, you remember, the customer master update form. Now, really, in this example here, it really would not be necessary to use a tab control, but I'm going to use it anyway just to show you the example. So many times you will find that when you have lots of fields for a specific form, that the fields are all over the place, and it winds up making it so that your user has to completely scroll down and scroll and scroll and scroll. And that's a pain. A lot of people can't scroll. And in fact, a lot of people who use your databases will not even be able to use a mouse, because some of them, I've had people and users who have been visually impaired, and so they have to find ways of using hotkeys to get around the screens. So a way to keep people from having to scroll a lot, we can do the little tabs. So it's just these little things like here where it says Custom Master Update Form, there's an example of one. You've seen lots of examples of tab controls in a lot of programs, including Microsoft Access. For example, if we go into the design view here of this database, if I just right-click and go to design view, and if I go to the properties tab, you'll see that there are tabs. This thing is slowing down again. I don't know what the problem is. There we go. Let's try it again. If we go into the properties sheet, you'll see that there are tabs across here. You can do the same with your forms. So here's how you do it. You can only do this in forms. I mean, you might be able to do it in reports, but you wouldn't want to do it there because reports are not accessible like these are. So in order to get the tab control, step one, I recommend that you come up here to the design right here and then click on tab control. You shouldn't even have to use the scroll bar there. And then click it one time. Do not click and drag. Just bring it down here and spot it with your mouse and then click. Now, I mean, this is the way I recommend you do it. Step two, put the fields on it that you feel should be put into. In this case, you get page 33 and 34. The page numbers could come out differently on your computer, but they all come out differently. But the main thing is to put some in one and some in another, and you want to group them, of course, to where they're relevant. For example, in the first tab, you might have things as general information about the customer and maybe the address. And then maybe it's like city, state, zip. And I mean, well, you would not want to separate, I'm saying, the address and city, state, zip. You might want to put telephones in another. You may want to put contacts in another. I've had dozens of tabs out there for clients because, I mean, we wrote a thing for the Department of Natural Resources. We wrote a payroll system. And they had over 180 fields they wanted to track for every employee. So we had to put things like next of kin in one tab and addresses in another tab. Something else I recommend that is almost always, this is in your quiz, by the way. I really recommend that you do not put the name of your customer, for example, on one tab and not have it on another. You want to make sure that you put those at the top or at the sides, so no matter what tab you're in over here, that you'll still be able to see what record you're on or what customer you're on. So I'm going to click on this customer number. I'm going to move it up to the top here and over. I'm going to do the same with the company name, and I'm going to do it with the context. I'm going to put those across the top here. I'm going to shrink them a little bit. They don't need to be near that wide. Customer first name and last, I'm going to shrink those. And then, again, I'm going to bring those across the top here. Now, then I'm just going to put the other information in the tabs. So for example, I'll put phone number and miscellaneous in one, and then the address stuff in another. So let's try it here. I'm going to click street address, shift, I'm going to click city, state, zip, and I'm going to do a cut command. I'd recommend you cut, and then you click on the tab here. You have to click it twice now. Click on page 33. If you only click it once, it will not go into the tab you desired. You got to click it twice, and then you do a paste. Now those will be all kind of whopper jawed. We'll fix them in a minute. But then I'm going to ask you to click on phone number, shift, click on email and gender, and then we're going to do a cut command on that. Control X, or you can just go to the home and cut command up there, and then we click page 34. Got to click it twice again, and then you click paste again. Now what you're going to want to do is to click somewhere on that tab control, press and hold your arrow key. We're going to bring it clear over to the left here now. And then we're going to rearrange those fields so it is not so unnecessarily wide. So let's click on the page 33, click on it once and then a second time. And now we're going to click and drag, or just press, I should just say click the city, customer city. We're going to hit the down arrow, and then we're going to hit the left arrow and bring it over there. Bring it over to the left. And then I recommend that you would then obviously click on the street address and hit the up arrow key and bring it above there. Obviously you want to know the address before the city. Then you click on page 34 and you're going to click on the email, and you're just going to hit the left arrow key. You're just going to bring it over here so that it's right over the top of phone number here. And so again, we're going to do the same with gender. We're going to click on gender, and if you click on it and then hit the down arrow key and then the left arrow key, and just bring it over so you can control where you want it pretty well. And then just make them line up. Use the alignment functions or commands we talked about earlier in the class. Now, if you click outside of this and then click back on it, click right like on the 33 or 34, now I can resize the whole schmear here. I don't have to have it so large. I may also want to do, I can press and hold the shift key and hit the up arrow and I can resize it. Now you'll see here I'm still hitting the resize and it's not going anywhere, and that's because I've occupied that space in there. It will not let you shrink it any smaller than where you have items there. Now the issue of right clicking and then doing the tab order, that would apply here just like it would any other way when you make changes in your form. That's something else we talked about. I can right click here and do a tab order. You'll notice that contact first is all that's in that list there. But you want to do the same inside these tabs here so that you're tabbing correctly here. If you right click on page 33 again, make sure you click on it a couple times and right click on the tab and click on the word properties, you'll see here it will let you change the name from page 33 to address data. And then if we click over here on page 34, we can double click and change that page 34 to miscellaneous, which would be like telephone and things like that. Phone, email, gender, that type of thing. If you right click on one of the tabs, I can then change the order of them. You can see now that is not tab order now, it's called page order. I can say I want the address to move down so that it's before the miscellaneous. That would probably not make very much sense, but there are times people want you to move them around in a different order. Again, with the Department of Natural Resources, we had one tab for the address, the second for the next of kin address. It was crazy. I mean, there were probably 10 different tabs on there, and they wanted them all in a certain order. So that is how you would change the tabs themselves, and I should say that the order, in that sense, they call them the pages. You right-click it and go to page order. You can remove a page, or as you can see there, I can click on address data and right-click, and I can click insert a page, and I can keep inserting as many as I want. The standard they'll open up with is 2. That's how you'll start with, and that's the default. Something else I want to show you how to do here that I did not. I'm going to go ahead and close this and save it here. Just for your information, I'm going to go out there and click and do what we refer to as a split form. If you go into split form, more forms and split form, it's just something else that I don't use it very often, but it's something your textbook does. Well, Access is acting up on my computer. Let me restart that. Let's try this again. I'm going to open up the customer table, and I'm going to come up here to create, and I'm going to go to more forms and then split the form. And oftentimes it'll just create up here. It looks like a main and a subform. The only difference is down below here, it lets you browse all of the other customers here, not only the one you're on. Again, not many people I've done databases for ever use that, but that is another thing you can do. On page AC 474, it also shows about how you can embed a chart regarding your data. Let's just, for example here, suppose we want to chart the agreement information we have. What I can do is to go into Design View. I've got a form I created of the agreements table. In order to insert a chart, step 1, make sure you're in the Design View. Step 2, click on the chart here. It's up here in the control toolbox there. Click on it one time, and then just don't click and drag, just spot it. You're going to bring it right about here, and then this wizard will pop up. Once again, just like with the combo box, make sure that the wizard is on before you do it. Step 2, we're going to concede that it's the agreement table we would like to have in the chart, and of course you can do a query or whatever. We're just going to do the table though called agreement, and we click next. Now it's going to ask us what fields you want to have controlling the data. For example, I can say I'd like to know the contract amount. I send that over, and the contract types. Maybe, yeah, let's do the contract types. I guess that's okay. Yeah, that might work out. We're going to do a contract type. We're going to simply click next. Here is where you choose the kind of chart you're talking about. In this case, we're going to simply use the pie chart, but you can use you can see here the 3D or whatever. I'm just going to use the simple one for now. We simply click next again, and at this point it may take a few seconds. I hope this thing doesn't shut me down again. But anyway, it'll eventually come up with another screen that'll give you more options here. At this point, then, you simply type in the options that you want. As it indicates there, how do you want the layout of your data to be here? That's better. So now basically what we're going to do here is we're going to actually tell them to bring whatever we want in there. I can click and drag these fields from the right. I can put them where I want, or I can just leave it the way it is. A minute ago it acted up. For some reason, Access 2013 is acting up on my laptop here. Anyway, we'll deal with that. Anyway, at this point, if we want to leave it that way, you simply click next, and it's just basically asking you to confirm if you want the chart to change from record to record. Select the fields that link the document. We're going to leave that as is. We're going to click next again. So the last one of these will simply give us a chart title. We're just going to leave it as agreement. So we click finish, and in a few minutes you'll see that it will embed the agreement chart inside the form. At this point, the textbook is asking you to use templates. I'm not going to go into that, and that is not required on the homework. So if you take a look at that, I'm going to try to get a note out there to pilot, but it's not necessary to do that right now. Again, the rest of this chapter talks again about exporting a PDF. It also talks about linking to a spreadsheet. The procedure with linking to a spreadsheet is the same as opening, or I should say importing a spreadsheet as we did earlier in the class. The only difference is when you actually, let's just try it again. If we go to external data, there we go, external data, we go to Excel, and we go find the file we're going to import. As I mentioned way back in one of the earlier sessions, you simply click link. You do the same thing if you're going to bring in an access table from another Access database. You do the same thing if you're going to link to a CSV file or to a text file, and then you simply go find your file you're going to link to. The one thing you have to remember, though, if you import a table from an Access database, that's all you can import. You cannot link to a form or a query or report in an Access database. All you can do is link to their table. So now let's move to Chapter 9. We're getting pretty close to being finished with all of this now. We just have bits and pieces we need to talk about from Chapters 9 and 10, and we'll be finished. Chapters 11 and 12, you're welcome to look at those, but we're not going to do the Visual Basic or the other elements in Chapters 11 and 12. So we only stop at Chapter 10 here. So no homework, you'll notice, in Chapters 11 and 12. If that changes, I'd let you know, but at this point, that is not what's going to happen. Let me show you what we can do here. I'm going to go into one of these queries here, and I'm just going to open up one of the queries that shows it shows the calculated field here. Notice, please, if I change, in this particular case, we did a calculated field here, and we had it take 2% times the contract amount. Now, if I change that contract amount to, say, $6,000, the surcharge is going to change. So what we can do sometimes is we can send the data into what they call a make table. In other words, we take this query and we make it so that if I change something here, it will not change anything else. The surcharge will remain unchanged. There's lots of times we want to freeze data in time, because once variables start to change, then so too do our totals and everything. I'm going to save this as make table. In order to create an append query, step 1, we go to create. Step 2, I'm going to go to query design. In step 3, you must choose what I would call the source table that you want to continuously send into the other table. So we're going to click customer, and we click close. So suppose we have a customer table here that we're continuously downloading from the web or something. We want to continuously keep sending in new records every day, or sometimes it's 2 or 3 times a day, into the same table. So step 1, in this part, up in this top part of the grid, you must have the source table. Earlier on in the class, if you remember, we had a table called customer empty, and that's where we're going to send this to. So the next step basically is to come up here, make sure you're in the Query Tools Design, and we're now going to click Append. Now we're simply saying where are we going to send these fields to? Well, we're going to send these to the table called customer empty, and we click OK. Now watch what happens. I double click customer number. It's saying customer number from the customer table is going to go into the customer number of the customer empty table. And if I double click each one of these, you'll see they will line up. Now one thing you have to remember is sometimes you're sending data from one table to another one, and sometimes the fields are not the same. In that case, I'm double clicking here and I'm sending these all down. As I double click, you'll see they're all going in there, but sometimes phone number here could just be telephone down here. If that's the case, I got to find the actual tables field I'm going to put it into. Something else you must remember, I cannot take one field and put it in, excuse me, start that again. I cannot put the data from two different fields. For example, I cannot do this. I cannot take, let's say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example here where I do it. For example, I don't want to take zip. I don't want to take that and also send that into the street address. Because I wouldn't, I mean, that would be silly to do that. But you cannot have two fields of the same name where you're sending things into the destination table. So this is the source table up here, but these are going to the destination table. So you have to be very careful you don't do that. So now let's get rid of those. I'm going to get that out of there. I'm going to double click zip. So now what will happen is when you are running your append queries, these, and by the way, these are also called action queries. The select query is what we've been using up until now. A select query simply shows you records or displays them. But these are action queries where they take your data and they do something with it. They create more data, they change it. So what I'm going to do here is show you one thing you need to turn off sometimes if these, in order to avoid pop-ups. I'm going on a little sidebar here, but if you go to the File menu, and then you go to the options for the database, one of the options in here will be Client Settings. Now there, you see, is where you can turn on and off the action query confirmation. Now, I'm going to leave that checked just to show you what I'm talking about. If I click OK, if I run this query, this thing says, well, you're about to append 39 rows. Do you want to do it, yes or no? But there are times when you set these things up. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to run the append query. Just click the right. I'm going to append another 39. Now, it won't let me do that here because of the primary key not permitting duplicates. If we try to send the same records into that table twice, there'll be duplicates in the primary key. So that's why I'm getting that error. All I'm saying here is that if you keep hitting these buttons, you keep getting these pop-ups. And there are people who say, I don't want those. They're annoying. I know that I'm going to be adding records. So the way to turn them off is to go to File, Options, and then again, it's under Client Settings. You would turn off the confirmation, and you click OK. The same thing will happen with any of the other action queries, such as the update query and the delete query. So I'm going to close and save, and we're now going to save that as append query. Now, another kind of action query is where we can actually delete records. Now, one of the nice things about these action queries you may have picked up, I'm hoping that you did it earlier, but I'm going to right-click on the Make Table query, for example, here. You'll notice you can put criteria in there when you create these tables in the Make Table. You can do the same thing with the Append query. I can say only send over the following people into this destination table. So I can use criteria to only change or act with certain records. Now, I don't have to do them all. So the next thing we're going to do is what they call an update query, and then we're going to do a delete query. An update query, let's click Create. We're going to do a query design, and here we're going to use that customer empty. We're going to bring in the records we did there earlier. And by the way, just so you can see that that worked, if I open up the customer empty, you see all those records did in fact go in there. But now we're going to update some things. Let's suppose, for example here, we would like to have all of the, let me think of a good example here. Actually, let me just stick with, I'm going to add a field to that customer empty. So I added the field called credit limit. Let's suppose I want to make the credit limit for everybody in the city of Holland to be a certain amount. So if I type in the city criteria here for Holland, okay, there's the Holland people. Now I'm simply coming up here, I'm going to change this to an update query. I click update up here in the query type, just like I clicked in the query type group to change it to append or to make table. Or again, if I just want to see the records and display them again, I go over here to select. We're going to change it to update though. And we're going to, now this, when you click update, this little row comes in here. It says update to. It wasn't there a second ago. And now we're going to give everybody in Holland a $5,000 credit limit. Remember, when you do stuff like that, it's not a good idea to put in commas and dollar signs. I probably won't hurt you on this one, but usually you don't want to do that. You don't want to do a criteria or anything. So, now again, I'm going to just go over here. I'm going to go to File, Options to show you what you'll see here when you run yours. I'm going to go to the Client Settings. I'm going to turn on those Action Query confirmations there. I say, now run it. If I click on it, say you're about to update 7 rows. I click yes, I want to do that. Notice, please, when I open the customer empty table, I will see that $5,000 has been added to just the Holland people. Then I can do it again. I'm going to run this query again. This time I'm going to say give everybody in the Grand Rapids area, I want to give them a $7,000 credit limit. I don't know why I would do that. Not that I would trust one over the other, but just to show you the example here. All due respect to the people in Holland, Michigan. But anyway, we click Design and we click Run. Same thing, we're going to update another 7 rows, and we say yes, we want to do that. Now, once again, you'll see when I open up the customer empty table, you see now we've got just the Grand Rapids people having 7,000. Now, please understand, when you do that, you got to be very careful, because fortunately I had added that field. But if you do an update query, you could wind up inadvertently doing a lot of damage to your computer. If you make the mistake and have it update the wrong field, if I had it put a 7,000, for example, in all the state fields, we'd have damaged a lot of data. So you've got to be very, very careful with the update query. You must also be very careful, obviously, therefore, with the delete query we're about to do, where it will delete records, delete certain records. So let's do that one now. So those are the 2 most dangerous, the update query and the delete. Close and save this. I'm going to call it update. So let's create a query called a delete query. We go to create, and we're going to go to query design. And now we're going to delete some of the people from the customer empty, and we're going to close. Now really all you need here again is just the city of people you want to delete. Let's suppose we decided we're unable to do any more business in a specific town. So I'm going to go to city. I double click city in here. I'm going to type in there, I'm just going to do the asterisk, and this asterisk one is going to just be doing anything that has the word Joseph in it. Okay, so again, if there's any St. Joseph, Michigan or whatever, see if I run that, you'll see there's the St. Joseph people. So now we simply click up in the query type and we change it this time to delete. And again we run the query. It says you're about to delete 4 rows. Yes, we will. We say yes, those rows will be gone from that table. There are no more St. Joseph people in this table because we have just deleted them. So you can see how the update and the delete query can be very dangerous if it's not done properly. Now we need to move on to page 519. We're still in chapter 9, or tutorial 9. I'm going to close. But what I want to do is to talk about the difference. I'm going to close this too. I'm going to save this query. Anyway, I recommend that anything we do in the sample that you save those for future reference. So it's like, how do we do that again? You can always open them up and look at them a second time. Another thing we have to revisit now is the issue of relationships. We talked about where one customer can have many agreements, but we've had situations where we have a many-to-many relationship. Years ago, I had a client who was an advertising firm that sold advertisements on book covers. Now, these schools could have more than one advertiser, but the advertiser could also advertise on more than one school. So we had to have, it wasn't like one school could have many advertisers only. If it works one-to-many both directions, you have what they call a many-to-many relationship. Sometimes we create tables that link up to other tables that have a one-to-one relationship. Well, if we have a one-to-one relationship, why would we actually split those two tables up? In many cases, I've seen clients of ours do that for security reasons, where they don't want, for example, we might have a table for customer, but then we'd have a table related to it, one-to-one with that customer, that would give sensitive information or private information, especially nowadays with the medical places we do work for the HIPAA laws. There's certain things they don't want people having access to. So oftentimes they'll put those in a separate table and create a one-to-one relationship. Now, to create a many-to-many relationship, if you take a look at your textbook on page 525, you'll see the example I have with the Belmont landscaping is not really a good one. But what you have to do basically is to create like a third table at the top of page 525, and you see you will have two primary keys in that table, one that will relate to one table and one that will hook up the primary key in the other. So that's basically how you would set them up. Now the question is, how would I go out there and make more than one primary key in the same table? Let me show you an example here. You'll notice here that if I have the invoice number as the primary key, then if I come down here and I click on primary key again, well, now I've switched. So the only way you can make both fields a primary key is you select them both, and then you can click on them and make them both a primary key. How do I know that these are both primary keys in the table called table treatment in your book? Well, because there's a key next to each of those field names. So what you would simply do is get the primary key of those tables to link up with these fields in this third party table, as we often refer to it. Okay, I'm sorry, I went quiet there for a minute. But anyway, here we go. Let's go ahead and close and let's save that. I'm now going to go to a new idea, a new concept here. We're going to do the one-to-one. If you're going to do a one-to-one, again, I'm going to just try to show you here. I'm just trying to get a good example. If we go to Database Tools and Relationships, if I want to do a one-to-one with customer Holland, let's say, I'm going to pull that up in here. I'm simply going to go to Design of the Relationship Tools and click Show Table. And I'm going to click Customer Holland 2014 and click Add. So what I could do here, actually that's not a good example. Let's use the customer empty. We're going to click on Show Table, go to Customer Empty, and click Add, and close. So now let's suppose customer empty is what's holding the data about our customers that is confidential. Well, it's just a matter of clicking and dragging the field from here to here. But notice when you do this, the relationship type will say one-to-one. So I can click Create. We got ourselves a relationship. Now, notice, please, that when we did it earlier, we did not have a primary key between those two tables hooking up both times. We used the primary key of the parent table hooking up with the foreign key in the child table. But notice the foreign key does not have a key next to it. But in this case, if we go one-to-one, then we would have that field in both tables as a primary key. Now, let me just remind you here, if I double-click this line right here to indicate that is a one-to-many relationship. So those are the reasons that we have a one-to-many, a many-to-many, and a one-to-one. Those are the reasons you have them, and that is how you would set them. I'm going to delete that now. I'm going to right-click on that and delete that relationship. And then I'm going to go back to where I was here. Oftentimes, you want to put two fields together that are alike. For example, that have the same data in two different tables. For example, I'm going to go to the Create Query here. I'm going to go to the Query Design, and I'm going to have us hook up with the Cities table and the Customer table. And I'm simply going to say, match me the cities that are in this table. Now, if I click and drag city from here to over here, that is how you would join two tables in a query design. What I want you to understand there, that is referred to as an inner join. An inner join is when you actually have data from two fields or data from two records from two tables when the records have the same value in the common field. In this case, the common field is the city field. So when they have the same data, then you have what they call an inner join. In other words, if I run that now, I'm going to put in the contact last, contact first. It will only show me the customers whose city also happens to be in this city, whose city happens to be in the city's table. Now, here's the deal, folks. If for some reason the cities, I'm trying to show you an example here. Let's suppose I get rid of Battle Creek. Let's suppose I get out of the city's table here. I'm going to close out. I'm going to get rid of Battle Creek here. I'm going to get rid of those two fields there. If I take that out of that city's table and then try to rerun that, you will see here that the Battle Creek people will now be gone. Take a look here. So you know there's no more Battle Creek here because there's no match. So that's what I mean by an inner join. Now an outer join basically is the opposite, where we're saying here, please show me every customer that does not have a city in this table. Now, that's something in a sense that your queries are doing when we did that query wizard early on in this class, where it actually said, show me an agreement without a matching customer. It creates what they call an outer join. So what you can do here is you can say, just double click this line here, you can say, well, I want to include all the records from customer and only the records from where city is joined. If I click OK, you will see that there's a little arrow that goes across. And when you do that, you have now created an outer join. So now if I run that query, you'll notice that the John Herzog, the Harry Billings, and the Steve Gorski, they are now back in the list, even though they do not have their cities are not in the city table. They're still going to show. I'm going to bring their cities in here. Of course, John didn't have a city. Let me do that again here. I'm sorry, I forgot. I got to, when I create an outer join, I got to designate which is which here. So let's just pull that out. But I'm just saying here, you'll notice here that anybody who had the Grand Rapids or didn't have a city at all, they will now show here. So that's the reason you will use an outer join. Sometimes I want to see the people in this table, even if they don't have a match in the adjoining or the matching table. Sometimes it's a good idea to create what they call a self-join. Let me explain what a self-join would be. Sometimes we have situations here where we need to bring in the same table twice. I'm going to click Show Table, and I'm going to bring in the customer table again. And notice when I do that it will say Customer 1. Now, Customer 1 and Customer here are the same table. What we're saying here is, suppose we have, I mean, again, with customers, these are like clients, but let's suppose that we have people who buy things who can also be sellers. Now, there's a couple of examples of that. I had an organization that was actually having a drawing, and they wanted me to keep track of all the people who bought raffle tickets from them. There's, well, you can do it for another example is you have employees, and they wanted to hook them up with their supervisors. But you see, some of the supervisors are also in the employee table. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to have it joined to itself. So what I can do is, if I have down here, if I had a field in a sales table here that said who's the seller, I would want it to be able to say, well, look, we should not have anybody in that seller's table that is not a customer, because a customer can also be a seller. So that's why they would simply do a self-join. So in this case, we go to Customer 1, and we click and drag customer number over here to those two customers. And now we have done what they call a self-join. There are other examples and other ways of doing this, and your textbook will show you that. So let me go ahead and now. We're now going to talk about indexing, and indexing is something that is done quite often. Again, for the most part, an index is just simply a list that relates field values to the records that contain those field values. But let me show you some examples of where you would use it. I'm going to go to the design view of customer empty, and I can say, I'm going to have the company name also be indexed. So for example, that way we know we cannot have this person put in there twice. But if you notice over here, it says an index also speeds up searches and sorting on the field. It may slow updates, but nevertheless, that's why we would say we want something to be indexed. So once we go to the field we want to index, we simply click on it, and we go to index, we change the no to a yes. Now you'll notice here that we can say yes, it's okay to have an index, and it's okay to have duplicates. But if we do not want the duplicates, if we're adding the index for the purpose of making sure that no two companies are the same, then we would index it to say no duplicates. Now let's do the last part here of the textbook and of the class, and I think this is what you're going to find most enjoyable here. I'm going to ask you to open up the master form, the customer master update form. We're going to create what they call macros. I'm going to close the navigation pane. We're going to create macros by hand, and then we're also going to have the computer create them. So the next few minutes is just going to be showing you a lot of things about macros and buttons and command buttons. For example, let's suppose we have users that really don't know that clicking the X here will close that form. You know, there's a lot of people who really don't know that stuff. You know it after using Excel and Access and things, but there are a lot of people who don't, and you have to create these databases in a way that they're user-friendly. So if I open this up, we could say, we can make it so that we can say, look, close this form, or we can, sometimes we want to put buttons that will do the navigation things. Why? Again, I've had a lot of clients do that because they say a lot of people don't know about those buttons down there. They don't know what to do to add another customer or to go to the next one or the last one. So we can create buttons that will do it. So here's how we do it. Step 1, go to the design view of the form. Step 2, you can make sure the wizard is on. Make sure the wizard is on. And then we go to the command button. I'm going to click the command button once. It is not a click and drag. We're just going to spot it there. And now we can have any kind of action that we want. In this case, for example, we're telling it that we would like it to, these are saying I can go to the next, the find, and all those. It does a lot of standard macros. These buttons will do a whole lot of standard macros, and these are the most common things you can do. But we're going to have it do something. We're going to have it go to record operations. We're going to tell it to add a new record. That's already chosen, so we click next. Now again, the reason we're doing this is to make this user-friendly. So we're going to put in here, add a new customer. Folks, you really have to spell it out for your users, or they won't know. If you just say add a record, there's some people who don't know what that means. So we're going to say add a new customer. You click next and finish, and now you see we have added a button that will take action. Let's save the form. We're going to go to the form view, and we're going to click add a new customer. You see it'll take us to a blank customer. It's just like clicking on the little star down here. So we're trying to make this user-friendly. Let's do another one. Let's click on the little buttons here. Let's click on the view. We're going to go to design view. We're going to do another command button. We're going to drop it over here. And this time we're going to have this go to the form operations. We're going to go to forms, say close this form. And we're going to go to next. We're going to say, well, I really don't recommend you use these pictures because that kind of defeats the purpose. A lot of people don't know what that means. Now, you and I know it means exit the doorway. Many people have no idea what that means. So we're going to put in here, close this form. And I'm going to put in here parentheses and save. Why do I do that? Because a lot of clients I have say, oh, wait a minute, what if I close it? I didn't get a chance to save it. Well, if we put on this, remember, when you close a form, it automatically saves records. They don't have any choice in the matter. But they don't know that. So that's why I strongly recommend that you put the words, close this form and save. That way they know they're saving it. It's just a matter of making it user-friendly and making it easier. So we click next. You can give it a name, but it really isn't necessary here. We click finish, and now we save this, and we go up to the form view. Remember, you can't work any of these things. The combo boxes or none of this is going to work unless you go into the form view. So we go in here, now we click close this form, and you'll see it closes. And it's beautiful. So those are examples of command buttons where Microsoft simply puts in the macro for you. Now the book gets very complicated here. For the homework, you don't have to do all the bells and whistles that they do. I'm going to just make sure you've done, what we're looking for and you've accomplished the task with these macros. So let me show you some other things you can do here. I'm going to close this form. We're going to create what they call a navigation form. Now one way you can do it is to make it so that it's just a plain blank form. We're going to click create, and we're going to go to blank form. This form is going to do nothing more than put buttons on it so it can take people to different forms, different reports, and so on. Now here is how we do it. Step one, of course, we do what we just did. We go to create, blank form. and we're going to go to the design view. Now, before you go to the design view, just look at this. You notice if this is just going to be a form that's going to put buttons on us to take us from here to there, we don't need that record selector, and we don't need the navigation pane because we're not going to have any records in this form. It's just going to be a form full of buttons. So we go to the design view, and we double-click this little box right here that's going to show us the properties of the form. And then we come down here to say record selectors, no. Navigation button, no. We don't need those. So we're just turning them off. Next, we're going to start putting, let's put a title out there just for fun. Let's click design, and remember we go to the AA. AA puts new labels out there. Or you can also put in title. Don't forget you can just click title. Title just drops something in there. I think that's kind of dumb. The book has you do it that way, and it's okay. But, it's just as easy to type the AA. Let's get rid of that. We really don't need a form header. So we're just going to click AA. That'll put a title out there, and it will also give us a label. We're going to put in here, welcome to the Belmont Landscaping Database. Now, as always, just whenever you put something in a label or a field, just like we talked about before, we can go to Format. We can make it bold. We can make it a larger font. We can, double-click here and center it. We can click and drag it. We can center it inside the box. So now we have like our main menu. Okay, we can even put it in there. We can go in there and just hit Enter and just type in there, or I should say Control Enter. Control Enter, we're going to put in there, all caps, main menu. Okay, now let's name this form main menu. Many times they'll call it switchboard. We're going to call it main menu. Now we can just start putting buttons out there to our little heart's content here. So to put the macros out there, step one, click on design, and we're going to go to another command button, and we're just going to drop it right about here. Now this is going to do form operations and where it's going to open a form. So we're going to click next, and we're going to have it, we're going to say open the, there's all kinds of them here. We're going to open up the agreement form state. So we choose agreement. We're going to leave it there. We're going to click next. And again, we're going to say open the form and show other records. We're going to leave that right where it is. We click next again. We're going to say agreement form. You don't need to put the word open there because it's understood that it's going to open it. So it's agreement form. We're just going to type agreement form. We click next and we click finish. And now we have a button on our main menu that will do nothing but open up the agreement form. Let's do another one. Let's click the 4X box there. We're going to click on it again. We're going to go to form operations. We're going to open the form called, we're going to go to next. We're going to go to opening the form that's the customer master update form. We click next. And we say, yep, all the records. We click next. And we're going to have in there customer master update. We click next. And we click finish. And now, you see, of course, it's a good idea to resize these so that they're the same width. We're going to go to arrange like we've done before, size and space, and we're going to go to the widest. And we need to move them, hit the arrow key or whatever just to move them where we want them. Let's click Save. And let's again go to Design and the Form View. So we click Customer Master Update. You see, there it is. And see that I can say Close this form. It takes me right back here. Now I can click here and go open it and close it. It takes me right back to my main menu because we did not close the main menu. So, we can do the same thing with reports. Let's go to Design View. Let's create one that will open up a report. Let's click the 4X box here. We're going to click one. It says Report Operations. If you remember, we did the mail report, the label report. We're going to click on that. You can choose any one you want. We click on it. It's going to be the, we're going to do the, let's do the labels customers. Let's do that. Click Next. And let me go back here for just a second. I want to make sure here. We don't want to mail it. I'm sorry, we want to open it. I beg your pardon. I'm not thinking. Mail report would actually send it to somebody in an email. That is another thing you can do, which is cool. I wasn't thinking here. I was thinking we named a report the mailing labels report. I was wrong. No, we're going to go to report operation. We're going to open report. Then we're going to go to next. And it's going to be the labels and the customers. We click next. So this is going to be mailing labels, is what I meant to say here. And we click next and finish. And again, we can resize it and make them all the same width. We save it and we go to the form view. These won't work either until you go to the form view. You click mailing labels and there they go. Now there's a few problems we have here, and I want to show you. Like when we do that one we just did, it will not put it'll not put it looking like labels because it sent it into where, if you remember there, it's in the report view, and you need that to be in the print preview to see it with going free across. So that could be a problem. So the problem is it didn't ask us when we did that button. So there's ways to make macros without using the automatic. The automatic is nice, but it's really better if you do them custom. So we're going to show you how to make some custom macros. Okay, step one, we're going to click, let's just go back into that form. We're going to go back into the main menu here. Let's go to the design form. Okay, now we're going to create a new button here, but we don't need the wizard on. We're going to click the button, we're going to bring it down here, but when the wizard pops up, we're going to click cancel, and we're going to put in here mailing labels. Okay, we're going to widen it. But see, then what we can do is we can go to the Event tab, make sure that this button's still selected. You go to the Event tab and you click on click. And on the right here, there is a wizard, meaning on click, what's going to happen? See, if I click here, you will see it has created this macro, embedded macro. It's already done it for us. We're going to make our own. We're going to click mailing labels, and on click, it's going to run this macro we create. So we click the three-dotted box, and we're going to always use the macro builder. And we're going to have it say, we're going to type open report, and then we got to give a report name. We're going to do mailing labels again, the labels for the customer. But here is where you control what design, or excuse me, what view. We want it to go into the print preview. Then we would want it to maximize. Now you could also minimize. We don't want to minimize, but we want to maximize. There are times you want to minimize, but not here. Then if you want to try it out, you can click run right here. Or we can just close the save it. And now you'll see that that has embedded that new macro right on that button. So now if you save the navigation form we've created, or switchboard or main menu, we click on the form view. Now if we click it, you'll see it'll bring it out in the print preview. Let's close. Now a third way to make a macro is to go to create and macro. Now, this is a macro that is not embedded to a button. It is just simply a macro we put out there that you can attach to any button. The macros we just created are only attached to the buttons we had, but I can make a macro and I can go around and I can attach it to any button I want. So here's how we do it. Step one, we're going to go into this is going to open a table. Open a table. See, notice in that one screen, it would not allow us to open tables or queries. It only let us open forms or reports. So if we want to open a table, we got to come in here. Macros can open or close or do anything you want to tables, whatever. We're going to do open table, and the table we're going to have is going to be the customer table. We're going to have it do another action though. This time we're going to have it come up here, and we're going to have it go to a new record. So let me try that again. We're going to have it click in the box and have it go to record. And then the object type is still going to be table, called customer. And the problem is this actually does not work right. You've got to click in here and click table. That's something was wrong with 2010, and Microsoft did not fix it in 2013. So if you type table in here, it's going to ignore it. You would literally, even though it puts it in there, you've got to physically open that box and drop in table. And that's been that way for about 5 years now, and Microsoft has just not fixed it. So we go into object name, we're going to type customer here, but don't forget to change this to new. We can go to next record, new record, last record, where we're going to do new record, and we save. And then you can also put we're going to save this, we're going to call it open, we're just going to call it open table of customers. And then you can come down and you can add a third argument that's a message box. And the message box can say anything you want. You can even say what kind. You want it to beep? Yes, we want it to beep. Do you want it here? It's like what type you want it to be, or warning or information. And you can type anything you want here. We can say, make sure, whatever, I'm just making this up, make sure you do not add a company unless this is a commercial client. You know, you can do anything you want. So that's the message box that's going to come up. So we close that, and yes, we save it. Now notice, if I come over here to the Access Objects groups, you'll notice that that's now a new group, Open Customer Tables. If I double click it, that's a way to run the macro. And there's our message we told it to. Make sure you not, and if you click OK, it closes it so that people entering will know what to do. So it's like a little heads up for people that we do. So that's how you would do it there. The problem is customers aren't going to know to come over here and run that. So what you got to do is you got to attach it to a button. So how do we get it attached to a button? Step 1, let's go to the design view. Step 2, we're going to put another button out there. Again, when we click on it and bring it down, we don't need the wizard. So when the wizard pops up, just click cancel. And we're going to double click in there and change that to say customer table. Some people want to see the actual table sometimes because they want to see the raw stuff here. So then you notice while that's selected, we go over here to on click, and we don't have to click the create a macro wizard because the macro has already been created. All we have to do is use the drop down list box, and it will list for us all the macros we've done. So we've only done one. I mean, all the macros we've saved, I should say, that are not attached to a button. Well, we've only done one that wasn't attached to a button. So there it is. We click on it, and we save it, and we go to the form view. And we click customer table. You notice it did indeed open that table. It gave us our message, and you'll see it took us right to our new record. So it did everything we asked. Now, a few little pointers here. If I right-click on this macro, I can go to the design view just like I can anything else. And you'll see here that these are what they refer to as arguments, okay? Arguments. And these are actions here within those arguments. But anyway, and it'll tell you in your book, a piece of data that is required by an action is known as an argument. It can have more than one argument. Multiple arguments are separated by commas and things. So we can have numerous arguments in here. So sometimes we try to have a very complex macro, and sometimes we don't want to do all 3 steps. So sometimes we'll run it by clicking the single step. Another, that'll just take them one at a time to see if, because we're getting an error, we want to see where the error is coming from, or to see if each of those steps is being done properly. Another thing you can do here, though, with macros is you can organize them into one big macro, and that's what they refer to as a sub-macro. See, if we did a whole bunch of buttons, folks, I have databases out there where I literally have thousands of buttons. Maybe not thousands, darn close to 1,000, but at least several hundred buttons out there. And that means we'd have several hundred macros here. Well, in order to organize them better, sometimes people prefer that you do a sub-macro. So to do a sub-macro, you do create macro, and then in here you click sub-macro. And when you do sub-macro, you have to give it a name. Rather than just sub-1, I'm going to simply say, like, we're going to call this open forms. We could call this sub-macro open forms. So then you see this macro could say, okay, we're going to open the form called, I don't know, we did so many of them before. We're going to do, again, this one's going to be the customer master update form. So that ends this sub macro. I'm going to do another one now. Another sub macro. We're going to have it open sub macro. We're going to call it open. Let's just say, we can just have one table. We're going to have it open customer table. We say, okay, what's the argument going to be? We're going to go in here, open table, and we're going to go in here and say, you know, the customer table. And be very careful with these views. The one you have to really watch is the report. Report, you don't want to have it print. You want it to be print preview. Let me do that again. Well, I'll show you that in a minute here. But anyway, customer, you want to make sure the view is the way you want. We're going to have a data sheet view. Okay, so that's another one. I'm just saying we could name all of these open objects. You see? And that way all of the things that open forms, open reports, open tables could be in one macro. And that way you don't have to do all this scrolling and have hundreds of them each individual. You can kind of organize them, keep them together. Then you can collapse them if you want. So you can say, okay, what do I have in here? I've got one for opening forms and one opening a table. Let's do the one with the reports I was starting to show you. Open report. And again, very careful here. I'm going to put the report name here as the customers and their agreements. But this is what you got to watch. You want to open this in print preview, but be very careful. I start in this area. You don't want it to be print. Because people run it, then it'll start printing. So people print out 100 pages and they're upset. So we do a print preview here. As I showed you earlier, now we're going to just simply collapse that, you see. So we save it again. So that's how you do it. A couple of other pointers now I wanted to show you, these sort of miscellaneous things. Let's suppose I want this main menu to come up. The first thing, this is not in your book, I don't believe, but this is important. You need to know it on your quiz. This is really important here. When people open up your database, they don't want to see this. They have no idea what to do with that. When that database opens, you want it to have your main menu be the first thing that they see. Then all they have to do is be able to read. Click Customer Master Form, and they put their data in there, then they close the form, and they're right back here again. That's what people want. Now, how do we get it so this is the first thing that they see? And before we answer that, the other thing you have to remember is sometimes we want to hide all this because a lot of companies will say, we don't want people going in the design view and playing around and changing the colors and screwing up our stuff. So you have to hide a lot of the database capabilities there. So how do you do it? How do you make that happen? Step 1, go to the File menu. Step 2, we go to Options. And step 3, we go to the current database. Now this is very user unfriendly. What you got to do here is you got to say, look, we want to display the form called main menu. Now, then you need to scroll down here to say we don't want to see the navigation pane and we don't want to see those menus. We want to turn those checkboxes off so that the people using it don't go messing up your system there. So you click OK, and then you click OK again. Now you've got it. Now if you close your database, and yeah, we're just going to say yes. We made some copies of some objects, and it's always making sure that we haven't accidentally cut something without replacing it. So I'm going to go back into the system here. I mean, assuming Access cooperates here, it's been acting up on my laptop here. Hopefully it'll open up here pretty soon. Anyway. Okay, so once it opens, we're going to open up the Belmont Landscaping firm, the one we did earlier. Just going to double click it there, and it's going to open up. But you'll notice, first thing it does is it brings us to our main menu. And then it's hidden all these things up across. And now, so I can't go in there, people can't go in there and mess around and change the designs. I'm going to go to the agreement form. And that was the first one we did. The agreement form, and again, this thing is acting up. It took a little bit because that form we had in there with the chart. Anyway, now if a person knows better, they can hit the F11 key and bring out the navigation pane. But if they can't right-click on anything because we disabled that. So they can look at stuff and they can enter data, but they simply cannot change the design. And that's the thing. We don't want them changing the design. Changing the data is no problem. But notice if I click on Customer Master Update again, I click Close this form, and we're good. The question is, what if I decide later I want to make more changes in the design, and I want to get back in there? Well, what I would do is I would do a file. I'm just going to click Exit here. And I'm going to go back into Access and open that database up again. Let me close this here. I'm going to go back. There's my son and my grandkids, my granddaughter, and my daughter-in-law. We'll go to Access 2013. And hopefully it'll come up. It's been acting up here, and it's taking its time. There we go. Now, I'm going to click on it, but before you click on Belmont Landscaping, press and hold the Shift key. Press and hold the Shift key, and now click on it, and it will open it up in the design mode again, and you can go back to what you were doing. You can now make more changes. Last but not least in this business of creating the recording now. This is something we're revisiting here. If you remember, we created a drop-down list box, and I believe we created it in, yes, in the gender one. We created also in the address data for the cities. You can do the same thing as a drop-down list box. I have no idea why they shifted this to Chapter 10 in your text, But if you want to do a list box, it's very similar, only you can see multiple items that you're choosing. Well, you do the same way as you did a combo box, only you click list box. And then you would bring that over here and just do the same things we did before. I want the list box to get the values from another table. You click next. We want it from the city's table. You click next. You choose the city field. You want the field you want it to show. You click next. All this is a repeat. We want to sort by city in ascending order, and you click next. And that's how we want it to look. You click next, and we got to make sure it goes into the city field. Now again, I've got access. I don't know what my access. I don't know if I have to reinstall it. Anyway, it will give you the list box. Anyway, just to let you know here, the reason that we would do that is kind of like what you see in Word here. You'll see in Microsoft Word when you have, I'll show it to you here. When you are in, you've got some selected text. Sometimes you will see, I'm just going to put some junk here and select it here. But if I go into the, there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm going to right-click on that and just go to my, let's go to the font right here. Open up the font. And you'll notice these are list boxes. And when you choose them, you've chosen them. That's the main thing I want you to understand with the list box. But so that's what they're doing in that system we just showed you there. So when you put a list box in there, that is how it differs from that of a combo box. The only other thing I need to show you here, as I was starting to say here before the thing fried on me here, I'm going to just show you the issue about an SQL. It's something we did talk about before. It's just a reminder that when you open up anything in the design view that has a combo box attached, just a reminder, if I go to the gender here, let's not do that. Let's go to the address date and go to city. If you remember, if you go to data, this is the SQL we're talking about. If you do a Shift F2, as they've done in your textbook on page AC583, you'll see that it's basically saying, what do we want to pull from that city's table? If you want to actually make it easier for you to use, though, you click the three-dotted box, and it takes you into the query format. Remember, every query you do in Access is, in fact, an SQL statement. Let me just show you a couple of other, like some of the other queries we did here. We did the one with the customer. If I go to the design view of that, I can, the same way I can go into this, and I can simply go to View and SQL. It'll show me the same thing. That is the SQL, but every one of those is what's put in your list box or your combo boxes. They do not create a query. You can put a query as your record source there, but as a default, they set it up as an SQL. This concludes the last of our recordings. I may add another recording as a supplement to clarify some of the things from the other recordings. I usually don't put that out there until the last part of the term. When a few people ask questions and they'll tell me to clarify things, I will often put a little supplementary appendix type recording, and that will be posted if that would be the case. Thank you. Have a good day.